The original Star Wars, now known as A New Hope, introduced us all to the concept of the Force and multiple characters who could access its power, like Luke, Darth Vader, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Princess Leia, although we didn't know about her connection to the Force until later on. But Leia isn't unique in being a character whose Force sensitivity was unknown while audiences were watching Star Wars for the first time. Almost every character and droid in the movie, no matter how seemingly unimportant, got their own little glup-shit-o story eventually, and in several cases this backstory involves some connection to the Force being explored, some of them more unexpected than others. And today we're going to explore as many of those as I know about, though let me know in the comments if I've missed anyone. The Mos Eisley Cantina may be a hive of scum and villainy, but it's also apparently a hive of Force sensitivity, with at least 6 other characters with some connection to the Force being there besides Luke and Ben. First was Lisub Surln, a member of the Quaritch species, who we mostly see just the back of, talking to someone in the back corner of the bar. In the old Star Wars trading card game, she was revealed to have been enslaved as a child with Imperial Inquisitor Tremaine picking her out for training in the Force before she escaped and went into hiding, though we don't know what happened to her after she showed up in Mos Eisley. Second of the bar's Force-sensitive patrons was the old man near the Ithorian Mama-Nadon, a Stenni shifter named Trinto Dwaba. Stenni shifters as a species had several Force abilities, particularly a form of telepathy, which they could use to essentially remove themselves from the awareness of others, disappearing into crowds. Unfortunately, these abilities often led to outside suspicions and even attempts at genocide, which the Jedi participated in, at least in Legends. These abilities also exist in the new canon to some extent, and Trinto himself shows up in the sequel trilogy at Maz's castle. Third is another character who's similarly Force-sensitive by way of being part of a pretty much universally Force-sensitive species named Danik Jericho, a member of the space vampire species called the Anzadi in Legends. They would basically drink people's life force, which they called soup, with their face probes, and they had a sort of telepathic sense of that soup and how strong it was in people, making Jedi a dream meal for the Anzat, one they probably like to eat while sitting back and watching a video on Corey's datapad after subscribing for more and leaving a like. They were also able to lure in prey with techniques the Jedi compared to mind tricks, although a simultaneously much more and much less savory version of it. Danik had hoped to eat Obi-Wan, having not encountered a Jedi for the last 100 years of his already millennia-long life, although he also would have settled for Luke. After the events of Episode 4, he ended up on the top of bounty hunters' lists when he made a failed attempt to drink Jabba the Hutt, and committed a massacre at Jabba's palace when he found out Jabba had already been killed. A book with a collection of short stories called Tales of the Mos Eisley Cantina established the backgrounds of 3 other characters, including Bo Shek, the smuggler talking to Obi-Wan in front of Chewbacca when he's introduced. Bo Shek's story sets him up as a Force-sensitive individual making a choice between the light and the dark, which Obi-Wan advises him on, so Obi-Wan knew he was, or could at least become, a Force wielder. There's basically an alternate storyline where Obi-Wan could have just yelled out a bit in the bar and restarted the Jedi Order right there. Bo Shek's story was eventually picked up on by the Empire comic series, which tells the story of him on the run from the Empire, eventually making it to freedom. The other 2 Force-sensitives got covered as a pair, the Wolfman Lack Sivrak and the Lamproid Dice Ebigon, who got the story of 2 star-crossed lovers turned rebel agents. Dice was already a rebel agent when she was in the Cantina, where she met Lack, and some pheromones got sprayed, starting their all-time great love story. Dice's species, the Lamproids, were fairly commonly Force-sensitive, as many, though not all members, had a form of telepathic communication, likely sourced from the Force. Dice was killed in the escape from the Hoth base, and Sivrak became despondent. He began to have visions bringing them back to their first time meeting in the Mos Eisley Cantina, though he so far hadn't displayed signs of Force sensitivity himself. He was finally killed at the Battle of Endor, where both he and Dice appeared as Force ghosts. So really, Lack is at least more up in the air about being actually Force-sensitive himself, instead maybe just being connected to Dice, but honestly, I feel like becoming a Force ghost should be more than enough to count for this video. The next Force-sensitive showed up while the Stormtroopers were headed to the docking bay which held the Millennium Falcon. This character briefly appeared at the side of the street, and later material retconned her to be Saris, a minion of the Dark Jedi Jarek from the Jedi Knight games. She'd been sent to Tatooine where she was posing as the Prophetess, a fortune teller which was covering for her actual position as a Force-sensitive Imperial spy working for the local Imperial governor. Eventually, she was killed after Endor by Kyle Katarn, future Jedi Council member in Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order. Other random background Imperial characters in the trilogy are nowhere near as commonly revealed to be Force-sensitive as the Rebels, but it does sometimes happen, as in the case of Nova Still. He's one of the Imperial soldiers on the Death Star, with the book Death Star claiming he's one of the stormtroopers chasing Han. But there's also some other contradictory information, so while he's definitely one of the people in one of the movie shots, we don't really know which one he is exactly. He had been trained in Teras Kasi, a form of martial art, and he had some Force-based precognition, which he called Blink. He was disillusioned with the Empire after they blew up Alderaan, though I mean, he was on the Death Star, so really what did he think would happen? He and several others did try to escape the station during the Battle of Yavin to defect, though still was killed in the fighting. A second resident of the Death Star was also revealed to be Force-sensitive, though only in the new canon. This was the Dianoga, which were more sentient in new canon than they were in Legends, and this particular Dianoga was named Omi. She got her own story exploring her past in From a Certain Point of View, an anthology series which goes from movie to movie, telling smaller sub-stories from the perspective of different characters in the movies. Basically the same way the Legends Tales of books did, but by movie instead of by a location or a group. Omi was taken into captivity from her planet Vaudran, and then eventually made her way to the Imperial Death Star. On the way, she had repeated visions of an incoming fiery death. She'd actually wanted to just communicate with Luke, and when she dunks him under the garbage water, she was actually just baptizing him, as she was able to feel his shared connection to the Force, something that she just called it. And in the time before the Death Star exploded, with her still on it over Yavin, she even began to learn to levitate objects. Moving on to the Rebel forces at Yavin, we have at least two further Force-sensitive characters. First is Fane Gospic, one of the people in the command center who, much like our first example Lee Sub-Sirln, was revealed to be Force-sensitive on a Star Wars customizable card game card. His story didn't actually include any details about his past as a Force-sensitive, it just says he's Force-attuned, so we don't know if he was aware of this connection to the Force that he had, or if he had any kind of training in it. And to be fair, attuned may mean something substantially less important than being Force-sensitive as well. Much more notably though, we have Kian Farlander, who pilots a Y-Wing at the Battle of Yavin, and then goes on to fly at Endor as well in the original trilogy. He actually does show up a fair bit throughout other Star Wars media, first as a Rebel pilot, and then into the New Republic era. Eventually, by the time of the New Jedi Order series, he's pretty highly placed as a general within the New Republic, on top of being the only person on this list who actually went on to join Luke's Jedi Order as well. Finally, and arguably most importantly, is Skippy the Jedi Droid, also known as R5-D4, who you may know as the red astromech who blows up when Uncle Owen tries to buy him. Technically, he's only actually Force-sensitive in the non-canon story Skippy the Jedi Droid, where he uses the Force to trick Jabba's Gamorrean guards to allow him to leave the palace, leading to his capture by the Jawas. He then has a vision that R2 needs to go with Luke, despite his own excitement to spend time with another Force-sensitive, so he blows himself up to allow R2 to take his place. While this is all of course non-canon, an in-universe article in Legends purportedly written by Jedi Knight Tam Azurja Min does refer to this as a rumor which exists in the Star Wars galaxy, so while it's technically not canon, it's both not canon in-universe and out-of-universe. That's going to do it for today, thanks for watching, and remember to like and subscribe for more of whatever this was.